Okay, and we are on. Hi, everyone. I am Katie Sanford, and I am here with Mattie Parker, who is running for Fort Worth mayor. And she has given us a little bit of her time today just to talk to us about her and her vision for Fort Worth and things that she's experienced as a woman coming into a male dominated field and all of that. So we are super excited to hear from her today. Hi, Mattie.
Hey, how are you, Katie? Nice to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for giving us this time today. So
Absolutely.
we definitely appreciate you being here. Can you start with telling us a little bit just about you? Just tell us who's Mattie Parker.
Sure. Great question. Appreciate that. Especially in politics, we kind of glaze over who the real people are that are putting their names out there. So I was born in Austin and then raised in Hico, big city in Central Texas. I was a third generation family farm kind of kid, but I had sort of a mixture of a small town, but really eclectic parents. My mom was a professional ballerina in Austin before she had
Oh,
me, and my dad had a criminal defense practice. And so when they moved us to Hico, I grew up on the farm, middle of nowhere, plenty of cows and rattlesnakes around. But in town, my dad had his criminal defense practice, or really by then it was a full service law firm. And then my mom was his paralegal. And then next door, she had a dance studio. So it was really,
oh,
for a small town kid, it was kind of an ideal way of growing up. And my grandparents lived there in town. My cousins are like sisters. And I joke all the time, campaigning, if we all had lived in a small town, I think the world would be a little bit better. And what I mean by that is, in a small town, you kind of have to just take care of one another, and you don't care where you're from or who you are, or what your dad does. All that kind of stuff just goes to the wayside. And so went K through 12 through Hico, and then went on to University of Texas at Austin for undergrad. And I loved that experience. And frankly, I was anonymous for the first time in my life, where no one knew what I was doing. So it was kind of nice, honestly. And then I started an internship when I was a junior in college, working for Speaker Tom Craddock in Austin, which was such a good experience. And that's kind of what my start in politics has been in public service. So I was actually bartending, waiting tables, and met a woman that struck up a conversation with me who had a big role in the mayor, in the speaker's office. So stayed on, worked full time through school. So it was just really juggling like a lot of folks do when they're trying to get their education. And then when I graduated, I ended up taking an executive assistant role for Speaker Craddock. Ended up meeting my husband, David, in Austin. And then we moved here about 14 years ago with our family. I have three awesome kids. They are 19, 10, and 4. Our 4-year-old turns 5 at the end of May. And our oldest daughter is adopted. So I'm really proud of that relationship. And she was 10, so she was an older kiddo. And we have a relation with her biological family, so it's unique. And so people oftentimes have heard me talk about, especially in some women's groups, about adoption and foster care, because it's such a big topic right now, especially in Fort Worth.
mhm.
Anyway, and then our 10-year-old is sort of like your little kid president, just kind of holds down the fort.
Oh.
He's such a smart, easy kid, and our baby is real crazy, and keeps us on our toes. So probably talking too much, but essentially that's how I got my career start. But I worked for Mayor Price for 5 years, as her chief of staff and for city council. Prior to that, I practiced law here in Fort Worth at Harris, Finley, and Bogle. I actually received my law degree from Texas Wesleyan. Right before it was Texas A&M, I graduated, had worked full time for Congressman Granger while I went to law school, and had worked for a state house member. So 17 years total in all this crazy public service. And then right now I'm the CEO and founding CEO of a nonprofit called the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership, which is just focused on getting our kids out of high school and onto a post-secondary pathway of their choice, college, career, military, and really to help Fort Worth's economy grow, and really invest in our workforce of the future. So.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a lot in a nutshell. And in another conversation, I want to dig more into some of the things that you've experienced and been through. I love that.
Sure.
So that's really cool. So I see now kind of how you got to where you're at now and running for mayor.
Yeah.
So what is your vision for Fort Worth? What do you see, in a perfect Fort Worth?
Well, first of all, I love this city, and I think we have a wonderful opportunity. We have grown tremendously, soon to be the 12th largest city, over 900,000 people. I'm incredibly proud to have worked alongside Mayor Price for those years, because I tell people this all the time, that I don't care if you agreed with every decision she made. What a phenomenal leader that served us for 10 years, steady leadership, watching the city grow and succeed. And I want to take us forward. That firm foundation we've had and fantastic leaders. And I was willing to step up as I know I have the right leadership experience, the right style, tenacity for the job that it takes to really be effective as a mayor. My vision is big, Katie. It's what are we going to do on significant topics like economic development and make sure we're recruiting our fair share of large corporate relocations to Fort Worth. More importantly, growing the next big success stories, investing in our small business and our entrepreneurs. What does it look like to really invest in our talented workforce that sit in classrooms right now? Education is a significant opportunity. Everyone wants to focus on the negatives. I'm focused on the positives. We have 16 school districts in Fort Worth. We have strong private schools. We have some charter schools. Of course, we're imperfect. There's not another candidate out there that understands the complexities of really serving students across Fort Worth. I love the partnership that T3 has with Fort Worth ISD and the work we've done in public education to really help focus on kids. Sometimes adults get in the way. And so my vision is really to focus on students, that every student in Fort Worth has access to a quality education from cradle to career, and that this community rallies around our homegrown kids in a way that really can allow the next Microsoft, next Amazon, the next Facebook to be born out of Fort Worth because we nurtured that talent in classrooms. And then, city services, the things that a mayor needs to champion also start in City Hall. And I want Fort Worth to be known to be incredibly business friendly, client focused. I call it a get to yes attitude, that when you come to City Hall, no matter who you are or what you're there for, you have a fantastic experience. And you walk away feeling like, man, this city appreciates me. They want me here. I'm a resident that matters. And we've started those initiatives at City Hall. I was a city employee for 5 years. I'm incredibly proud to have done that, and that we have public servants there, but we need to empower them to make them feel like they really are difference makers and understand the significant move that they have in Fort Worth. City infrastructure is a big topic right now, especially nationally, as we talk about this infrastructure bill. But Fort Worth, despite our fast growth, and believe me, we get stuck in traffic sometimes, we can really capitalize on things we have done right and plan better for the future. I am concerned about North Fort Worth. We have over 200,000 people north of 820, making sure people can get east to west, not just north to south. The growth of those roads that were 2-lane need to be 4-lane. And that was country before, right? That was in TJ and in an annex. Now it's part of a big city. We just have to be holistic about our approach. We also have communities in Fort Worth that need focus. We started that initiative with neighborhood improvement. We started in Stop 6 and we spread across the city. That was really intentional, what we looked like to revitalize communities with city infrastructure, curbs, sidewalks, security, additional bike cops, really working with community to understand what they wanted. But we need to scale that across the entire city to serve all neighborhoods, because I think strong cities, the bedrock of that are our neighborhoods. And the last thing is public safety. You cannot have a world-class city if you don't appreciate the men and women that wear a uniform, whether they are EMTs, they're police officers, or they're firefighters. They are serving day in, day out, and they have never worked as hard as they have in the last year with COVID and what they've had to respond to. And so I'm incredibly proud to have worked alongside those men and women. And I want to ensure that we have the safest community in America, because that means better for business. It means better for students, makes it a stronger city. And those are the things that really matter to a mayor. And then I'll just say this is a nonpartisan election. My vision for this city is that we become an example for the country about how to get it done and work together, build consensus. We do not always have to agree, and we will not agree. But being mayor of a large city, you cannot get anything done if you're ideological, if you are far right, if you are far left, and you're not willing to listen. And I think in this country right now, we've stopped doing that, which is why you see a lot of problems. People complain about the cancel culture, right? We're all canceling each other. Like, I don't care what side you're coming from. And I think this is the perfect audience to have that conversation with, because as moms, as business leaders, as women, we're often the ones that are usually having to pick up the pieces and figure it out and have a solution. And so that's the kind of mayor I'll be for this city. Just really having that listening ear and wanting to have a big table of people that feel included at the city.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a good, I like a lot of the points you made, the things that you said. And I'm that north of Fort Worth that you were talking
You
about.
know
So
it, yeah.
yes, when I moved there, it was country. It is not anymore.
Not at all.
So yes, you are absolutely right. And so I love everything that you just shared with us, I think that that is great. So thank you for that. And now in your journey to where you're at now and what you've experienced as a woman, what are some things that you've maybe had to overcome or things that, adversities you faced and how did you deal with them? Like, do you hit walls as a woman and maybe not be respected as much as maybe a man or,
Yeah.
just anything like that, any situations that you can think of that you could share and how you've overcome them?
Yeah. So I'll share a few funny stories. So first of all, I've been incredibly fortunate, even at a young age when I started in the speaker's office, to have men and women that were bosses, leaders that championed my success. And I could give you countless examples. I remember once I think I was 21 years old when, or maybe I was 22 by then, when I worked for Speaker Crowd as his executive assistant. And it was not uncommon for me to be on the floor, which meant back and forth from his office to the House floor, taking things back and forth to him. And one day, a group of members that were in a group of 4 desks made some pretty inappropriate comments about me walking in a pencil skirt.
Mm.
And I got to the dais, and unbeknownst to me, the speaker heard them say it. And this man, I mean, he's busy, right? He's running the state of Texas, and he walks off the dais and dresses all 4 of those men down. Like, you will not ever act like that on this floor. And you're lucky I'm not walking over to the media table right now to report you, so that everybody, and this was before Me Too, right? None of that kind of stuff was as out there. And it was a very different time, but I felt so protected in that moment, right? Of someone that I respected so greatly. And Tom joked afterwards, he's like, I mean, I didn't know, you're lucky I could hear that well up there. I didn't like what they had to say. That was not appropriate. We're not going to do that here. And it was not paternalistic. It was like, she's doing a hard job. You keep yourself, in check. That's inappropriate. And then the chief of staff for Speaker Craddock was an incredibly strong woman. And she did everything, Katie, about like how you should dress, because I was young, and just making sure all of us on staff knew what you wear matters and women get held to a different standard. And if we ever have an issue, come to her first. And she wanted us to be learning constantly. So we were never felt like you were in a fiefdom. As chief of staff, she always made sure you were included in all the policy decisions. Even if you weren't making the decision, she wanted you to be informed about why they were going a certain direction. I still communicate with her. When I became chief of staff to Mayor Price and City Council, I sent her a note in a Molly pin to say I wouldn't be here without you. And I really sincerely mean that. And she's still, her name's Nancy Fisher. She's awesome. She serves in Austin as a lobbyist now. But I'll say this too, I've had really negative experiences and I've had really positive experiences. And I think what this job has taught me is, rather than being intimidated, and believe me, we all get intimidated, right? When you're the only woman in the room, which has happened to all of us before. Rather than be intimidated, I really appreciated the book that Cheryl Stanford wrote about Kalinin, and what like inserting yourself, being at the table, not being afraid to speak up. But when you do speak, have authority and a really strong voice about what you're saying. And there's power in that. And so I've chosen, because I have been really fortunate, even since I've moved to Fort Worth, about being able to champion really important decisions as the only woman in the room. And so using that as an opportunity and being thankful for it rather than intimidated by it, as a moment of what it looks like to really make sure we're progressing in Fort Worth the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, those are hard things. We've all been through that before, right? But I am one of those people, and I'm raising 2 little boys right now as strong men. Of some of my biggest champions have been men. And so I'm always clarifying. It kind of hurt me a little bit when I watched the Me Too movement happen. I felt like there was a little bit of a canceling of men. And I said, oh, just please don't do that, because some of my bosses, some people that have put me forward for jobs or opportunities, have been those people. And of course, I've worked for some incredibly strong women, political figures, Betsy and Congresswoman Granger, both included, that are trailblazers and have, really charted a path that now you and I and Mackenzie get to walk on because they came before us. So.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I've even thought about that as a woman, maybe making a presentation to a group that's mostly men or something like that, like probably overthinking what should I wear and this and that, because like you said, it's kind of a double standard in some areas. And I don't know if those are things that will ever go away, because there is just a difference in male and female in some aspects. And but I think the way that book that you mentioned, the Lean In, I think that's a great recommendation for a book to read on just those things, and owning the fact that you are a woman, but being a strong one.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to help even younger generations understand what that means. It doesn't mean just being like gripey or anything. It
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
owning your thoughts and feelings and opinions, and then being you know well researched and thought out. And
You'll love this. So one of my best friends from Kansas City, she was chief of staff for Mayor Sly James when I was chief of staff for Mayor Price. We got to know each other at a few different events and just became fast friends. When she left the mayor's office, she published a book that's out there now and doing quite well. And its title is called The Thin Line Between Cupcake and BITCH. And it's all about that thin line, right? Of how
right,
do you come across as someone that is open-minded and friendly and passionate, but you don't go too far because you get labeled and then you can't come back from that. So
exactly,
another really good read. And I just, the her perspective is maybe even valuable than Cheryl's because she doesn't run a major company, right? She's
right.
building her brand and building her business and what it's looked like to do that. So good reading recommendations for everybody.
I love that. I'll have to include those in
Okay,
the comments when we share this.
good.
So as far as recommendations, that's kind of my last question is, what would you tell younger women, or even your daughter or anything like that, from things that you've learned? What would you tell them if they're trying to maybe be in a leadership role or start a business or just grow as a woman, a powerful woman? Like, what advice would you give, anyone?
Yeah. I think first be yourself and be vulnerable, right? I mean, if I'm being honest, this is a scary journey I'm on, right? Running for office and raising a family and putting your ideas out there, and the keyboard warriors and everybody's got an opinion right now. And
Mhm.
so I think now we call it imposter syndrome. I think that's just fear, right? You don't have to label it. It just is what it is. And so be vulnerable in that. It's okay to have those feelings because we're all human. And I think that makes you more approachable and people want to help you more when you own that.
Mhm.
Um, the second thing is dream big. Anything is totally possible. I do worry about and I don't have, this is not scientific necessarily, but for young women that have grown up as digital natives that have really had this their whole lives,
Mhm.
what as we of society have we done to them that make them feel less than because they've been so exposed to social media imagery that makes them feel like they're not worthy or not enough
Mhm.
and can't accomplish what they want to. And I don't know how old you are, Katie, but my generation, I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college. And so I got to grow up largely reinforced by the healthy relationships I had around me. And a
Mhm.
lot of young women don't have that now. And so I think it's really our obligation as professional women now that have come through that to make sure we're pouring into young people to say, ignore all the noise, right?
Mhm.
TikTok and Instagram, that doesn't matter. And be authentic. And as someone now that is out there on social media in a much larger way than I had before, not something I did, it's behooving on me to make sure my image is authentic, that it is
Mhm.
truly who I am. And I've had people say, well, quit posting your kids so much because no one cares about, like, well, they're the most important thing in my life. And so if
Mhm.
I'm not posting about them, then I'm not being authentic. So yes, I am at school drop off every day. That is who I am. Or whatever. And you if you kind of pay attention to folks in leadership and not just politicians, entertainers, it's all the glitz and the glam.
Mhm.
But what people really want is authenticity and for someone to be themselves. And then back to your original question, then you allow someone that's not in that place of power yet to feel like, oh, they're just like me. I
Right.
could absolutely be on that path. And then we get to really, once you do that, you can talk about access. What does it look like to give opportunity to make sure everyone does have access to think about those things? And we all have the ability to do that as mentors, as mentees. Sometimes I learn more from a young woman that I mentor than I ever probably could pour into her, right? Because we have different perspectives. And I appreciate that every day. And I think we just kind of, that's one thing that women do well most of the time. If we recognize there's room for everybody at the top, that it's not a
Mhm.
competition, um, and not to feel like you're edging somebody out, because sometimes women can be that way, that, and we can be a little bit feisty. And I certainly want to be the kind of leader that I've gotten to work for, and Mayor Price is the best example of we all can be at this table and we can all be leaders together. So that's kind of a long-winded way to answer your question.
No, I think that was great. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. I think you're absolutely right. And we do, I think if women spent more time, building each other up and finding the strengths in each other and then just meshing that together as a team, rather than a competition, we could, like you said, we could all be at the table and we could all be winners. And I think that's great. I love that insight, and I think you made some really big points. Being authentic, dreaming big. I think those are all things women do too. They kind of limit themselves because they're worried about everybody else and all of that all the time, and don't realize their own potential.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's great advice. So I definitely appreciate that, and we appreciate your time today and us just getting to know you a little bit. Is there anything, any other little piece of advice or anything you'd want to sign off with, or if anybody has any questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, we'll make sure and give you email and cell phone number. All that's welcome to anybody that wants it to reach out. And not just about politics, like in general, the work we're doing in education and really just wanting to serve the community. And I would just say kudos to you, Katie, for doing this and to having this organization where women feel like they've got a place, a safe space to share and be together, especially in male-dominated industries. It can be really intimidating. So I hope that when I'm mayor, that I get to come and speak to your group in person post-COVID, and really get to meet some of your members and learn more about your organization and what you want to accomplish.
We would love that. We'd be honored to have you. And so keeping fingers crossed, it's coming
Working
back
hard.
on soon. Yes, I cannot wait. Well, thank you again so much for all of that. I'm going to include those books and your contact info and all of that when we share this. And I just appreciate your time and what you're doing and your vision and just wanting Fort Worth to have everything. I love it. So thank you so, so much for just being here and talking with us.
Sure thing, Katie. Well, and we'll get you some help in the congestion up north. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I need just send a helicopter.
Seriously, it's coming.
Good. Well, thank you so
Have a great
much.
day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.